Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the full moon in Taurus, which is occurring on November 5th, 2025 at 7:20 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I believe that in most parts of the world it will be on the 5th. I'm trying to think of the Southern Hemisphere. I think it's about 16 hours ahead of me. So it might be in the early hours for those people on the 6th. So at every full moon, the sun is at the same degree in the opposite sign. In this case, since this is a full moon in Taurus, it'll be the sun in Scorpio, and they will be at 13 degrees. And like when we enter Scorpio season, which as am recording this, we're already full into it now, because I'm recording this at the end of October. We're entering a very intense time when a lot of things can come up to the surface. So it's almost like, to me, it's like a month of like constant full moons, because the full moon is known for bringing out secrets or kind of illuminating what has been hidden. And that is what Scorpio as a sign is all about. And the 8th house that Scorpio rules is all about. The other thing that really can come up at this time are issues like with relationships, because with the moon, but it's kind of like what I would call the dark side of relationships. Although the moon is exalted in Taurus, so if you have your natal moon in Taurus, it is considered a very powerful placement. But in general, these two signs are infamous for jealousy in relationships, and in the case of Scorpio, having a lot of having a lack of trust and control issues and being fixed signs. There can be a lot of stubbornness, like refusal to see another person's point of view, and it's like my way or the highway type of mentality and behavior. So it's super important when we get to this date that people really not go there, because there's going to be a pull to be fixed in your point of view, and that can lead to a lot of conflict with others. The other thing that really jumps out at me, and another thing that these two signs can really be about are finances. Taurus rules the 2nd house of earned income, and Scorpio, the 8th house of shared resources or other people's money. So this may be an issue that comes up within your own relationships, within your life as a whole, regardless of what sign you are. This is just kind of what is floating in the air, so to speak. And so that's another thing that I think people have to be wary about, is, being too quick to kind of, I think of the Four of Pentacles in the Tarot, like hugging your money and being very, possessive or even downright greedy in some cases. If you're dealing with a will or anything like that, being as detached as possible. There are going to be some people, if you're dealing with other people's money, for instance, or shared resources, where somebody else may be trying to exploit a situation. And yes, I do think that there are even money, sometimes you do have to fight for it, but because it transcends the issue of just like I want that money. It's like, that by giving in to another person, it's actually hurting them, because they're the one who is greedy, and maybe they have been doing this for a long time, and you have to put your foot down. There are going to be examples of that. But in general, because this is such possessive energy, it's important to remember who you are at a higher level. Because, it's really interesting. The earth and the water are compatible elements, even though these two signs oppose one another. They're still compatible elements, and yet they are earthbound, because they're Scorpio is associated with, like psychic and spiritual things, but they're both part of the earth. Taurus, the literal earth, and water is part of this 3D reality too. So that's another reason why we have to kind of rise above that, because this is one of the ways that humanity has been controlled through these material resources, and thinking that this is the end all be all. But beyond that, one of the things that jumps out at me is that Mars is at 0 degrees of Sagittarius. So I consulted the ephemeris, because plugging in the information for the chart doesn't tell you, exactly when the planets are moving into their signs. And I come to find out that Mars is moving into Sag on the day before. So it will still be at 0 degrees on the 5th. And Mercury is at 5 degrees of Sag, and they form a conjunction. And why this is so important, not only a conjunction between Mercury and Mars within itself, but in Sagittarius, is, to me, there is something going on that is trying to blow the lid off of something. And I can already see the signs. And yes, you've probably heard about disclosure, and you're like, okay, everybody says this is going to be the month. And yes, that is very true. I've said that. I've said that myself. I'm not going to lie, because, there were other things that pointed to that, but I can already tell, because we've already had things that have come out. It's like dribs and drabs. And in retrospect, we'll look back and go, wow, there were so many things that came out. But when we're in the thick of things, it's not going to seem like it's just like this one big, disclosure. It's kind of like coming out little by little. But I think that there might be something big, because it is at the time of the full moon. And the sun is in Scorpio. I would rather that the moon be in Scorpio. That would be perfect. But these planets are, the personal planets are interchangeable to some degree in terms of their function. So I still think, and just by virtue of having Mercury in conjunction with Mars, this can bring things up in your personal relationships. I mean, watch your words, because this is a very impulsive speech. And as somebody who has my natal Mercury in Sag, I can verify that you can have, foot in the mouth issues. So you don't want to speak impulsively, or even write impulsively if you're online or anything like that, because you may act in leisure and repent in haste. And so that, the fact that this is happening at the full moon can mean that, for the collective, because that's what these types of readings are really meant to be ultimately, without looking at somebody's private charts to see where that's going to fall. But as a collective, that we could see these kinds of things coming out. Now, just because something comes out doesn't mean that everyone's going to believe it, by the way. So don't get it twisted. There are still people that are going to push back and deny that things are true. And, I was reading some, who knows what I was reading, where I got it from, but they were saying something like, now is a time when it's not your place to try to convince anybody of anything. It's almost like, if you know this thing about the bifurcation, that people made certain choices and it kind of created a split in humanity. And that's why there is so much divisive energy out there, people taking sides, polarization, that sort of thing. But almost that, now you had your chance. Maybe you tried to help people. If you feel like you're one of those people who could see what was happening, you could say in the last 5 years, but actually it's even before this 5-year period. It's the last 10 years, I would say, that things have been, insane. And a lot of people are agitated for multiple reasons right now. I live in the United States, so I can only speak to my, asylum. My country is an asylum, and I'm sure that people in the UK can attest to their own version, and other places in the world as well. Okay, so anyway, so we're going to be called to speak our truth, but we should be very mindful about it. And by the way, I'm not, because I do have Mercury and Sag, I'm not one of those people that thinks, okay, now shut up. I find that like very hard to do. I think I'll always be, it's not just about being opinionated. It's really about wanting to help people to see what's happening. But then they think that you're deluded. So that's where it gets to be kind of like pointless, when the other person thinks that you're the one who is, operating under some delusion. But also we have Venus in Libra. And so going back to what I was talking about with relationships as well as with money, because Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus has that connection to money through Taurus, through ruling Taurus. So there is this idea with Venus and Libra about beauty being very important. And that is, Venus is what we value. And so if somebody has this natally, they really value beauty. And yet, how do you define beauty? Is it just like, the standard? Because, someone may find out that their beautiful spouse has been cheating on them. And they're very, it's not just about beauty with Venus and Libra, it's also about good manners. And the interesting thing about that is that sometimes people are looked down upon if they're kind of rough around the edges, but they might be very honest people too. And somebody who's like a slick individual who looks good, says what you want to hear, they may be the kind of person who is very duplicitous, very dishonest. So what do you do? Do you value the outer or the inner? Some people don't want the truth, they really don't. So it's going to be very interesting to see this. I mean, I think whenever you have fire energy, you have very dynamic energy. And we have not had Mars and Sagittarius. Like a year ago, I believe that Mars was in Cancer because it went into Leo on December 6th last year. So it's probably spent the month in Cancer a year ago. So you can see how far Cancer is from Sagittarius. And usually Mars is close to the sun. So we have not had this Mars and Sag energy for quite a bit for an inner planet like that. So this should be very interesting. And given the full moon and the fact that it just entered, and then also that what I can't say it like 3A is a 3AI Atlas, which I believe is there is some I don't know if it's a channel, what you'd call her a channeler or what, talking about it, said something about the 31st of October of being important connected to this. Like, it's kind of like giving us downloads or intensifying the energy. No, it's like maybe it's gonna raise our vibration or give us a spiritual upgrade, basically. And the thing about that is that I heard October 29th, which is when I'm recording this, that it was connected to that. So that was very interesting as well. So even on November 5th, I mean, it's going to be quite charged energetically, and we may feel that we are kind of really upgrading, and that can help with what we're dealing with, but it can also make us very sensitive to the outer energies too, I would imagine. So it should be very interesting. Remember too that Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, so we have all this like Venus and Jupiter energy swirling around. That could be good for finances in particular. So full moons bring things to fruition, to their abundant state, their flowering. And so it could be a financial boost as well. Let me see if there's anything else I want to mention here. Even it's nice to see that Mars is sextiling Pluto for a change instead of squaring it or opposing it. Oh, you know what? Venus is squaring Pluto. Okay, very, very important here. It's also squaring Jupiter, which is very self-indulgent. Okay, so in relationships, that is a transactional relationship. If you have this natally, then you probably have a tendency to get into transactional relationships. As a matter of fact, if you have a square opposition, or I could even say like a conjunction between Venus and Pluto, watch out for this time, because that could cause you to perhaps be a little bit too concerned with money as it pertains to relationships and love, because Venus is relationships and Pluto is sex, power, and kind of the seedy underbelly of life. When people have a square or opposition natally between Venus and Pluto, they will tend to get into relationships for those, those transactional relationships. I have a whole video on transactional relationships, actually, if you check my channel. And because the square is to Jupiter is also going on, there can be, you know what it is too. I mean, the moon in Taurus is very sensual. But sensual doesn't just mean with sex. It means like, all of the senses, just coming up. And people, that's where money comes into the picture, because, we need money to buy all these things that, like the amazingly delicious food that's so rich and so it tends to be very expensive and all of that. So we may feel very self-indulgent at this full moon, which, So what? I have Taurus rising. I don't see the problem here. Eh, and and with the Sag, it's so interesting because my sun is in Sagittarius and my sun and ascendant form in conjunction, which is supposed to be like this really awkward angle where the two signs have nothing in common. But you can always find connections if you look hard enough or deeply enough. And one of them is that they're both they can be self-indulgent. So you put them together at this particular time, and you have Mars like having just entered Sagittarius. And by the way, and you have like maybe that desire for something luxury and really just enjoying the pleasures of the flesh. But Mars in being at 0 degrees of Sag means it's on the cusp of Scorpio. And that was one thing I wanted to touch upon because that's very powerful because of, Mars is one of the rulers of Scorpio. And that is probably what gives Scorpio people that very obsessive nature, besides the Pluto, that's the other ruler, where it's like leave no stone unturned, like relentless. That's a good way of putting it. And so because it still can retain that energy, being at 0 degrees of Sag, you can have like a relentless desire for the truth. And then, add Mercury and Sag and you really have it. So let's see about anything else going on. And I was just going to say about that Venus square Pluto is that maybe some people realize that they're in this type of transactional relationship, or maybe they realize that it's not enough for them. That, money isn't everything. I know that's a cliche, but a lot of people just kind of poo-poo it until the chickens come home to roost. Venus in Libra, for instance, is like the people that really love being part of a couple. And that's how they want to do their relationship. And you could have someone who married for money and they married a workaholic and they're alone most of the time. And they're thinking, wow, I have all this money, but I have no one to enjoy it with. And so, that could, whoa, I just thought of something. If you're thinking about like the sensuality here, that could tempt people. So watch out for that. And let's see what else. Yeah, and Venus is opposing Chiron. So that can really bring up the pain of feeling worthy, and that's where the money comes in, because you will see sometimes people that use money to feel worthy, whether it's designer clothing or their beauty in a way to do that. I can really relate to that in my past. But lots of nice trines. Mars trining Jupiter, doing things that are positive and good for, in an expansive kind of a way, positive actions. Mars trining Saturn, just good of taking action. This is still before the Mercury retrograde. Of course, it is getting very close to it, but taking action that has maybe long-lasting positive consequences. So, and actually, Saturn and Neptune will be in conjunction. So that's great too, because you have the best of both worlds. You have the vision and idealism of Neptune and the and also the kind of guidance from above from Neptune, and then the practicality, the foundational, organizational Saturn. So I think this is a good time to do something that you want to see long-lasting results, even if it is in the shadow of Mercury. Okay, I think that's all I really wanted to talk about. Hope you enjoyed this. All the best to you. If you'd like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.